All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Good to have you. My name is James Kernan with Kernan Consulting, and welcome to the educational webinar. I'm going to be your host for today's call, and my guest is sales and customer retention expert and good man, Alex Farling of Lifecycle Insights.
Be careful how loud you say that good man part. People will start to have expectations.
Yeah. So today we're going to be discussing how to deliver the QBR that your customer deserves, the quarterly business reviews. So we're going to dig into that. This is one of many ongoing educational sessions here in the Kernan Consulting community. I anticipate the session to last for about 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up for a few questions. So cameras on, microphones off. Feel free to drop any questions that you have in chat, and then we'll answer those at the end. So let's go ahead and get started with today's session. Alex, are you ready to roll?
Yeah, let's rock and roll. Let's get into the slide deck here. So for those of you who don't know me, Alex Farling, I'm your traditional coming out of the MSP channel guy. Found a problem, figured out that we needed to fix it, and what that really came down to for us was we were at a point where we were growing the MSP. We were to a point where I couldn't do it all, and so what we had to do was find a way to scale account management so that I could literally hand it off to another person, but that my customers would get the same feel and the same experience as when I was showing up to do them. And that's always tough and scary as an MSP. So we talked a lot about what the process ought to look like. We started to build a product around it, and we built the product around it. Our beta customers and our trialers and such told us that it was just amazing. We brought it to market, and we've just been so lucky in the way that the community has accepted and kind of lifted up our product. But since we started building it, we've talked to over 600 MSPs. We have about 600 MSPs on the platform today, and we've learned from each of them. So what we do for a QBR today, what we teach, is bigger and better than anything we had at our MSP, and we were pretty good at it at our MSP. So now we're able to take what we've learned from several hundred MSPs, deliver it back to the channel, and help coach and teach other MSPs to move the needle on this QBR thing. And it's a little bit scary. QBRs are tough. They're difficult. Most of us got into this because we wanted to be technical. We wanted to play with the shiny things. Right. We didn't necessarily want to go talk to the people. In fact, some of us, some folks in this space really don't enjoy talking to the people. They try and stay away from them. So what we want to deliver for you today is a little bit of coaching, a little bit of consulting, kind of some guide rails for how to do the quarterly business review and deliver value to your customer without having to really go too far outside your comfort zone. I'm a real believer in be authentically you, keep who you are when you go do this kind of stuff. You're not buying a new platform or taking on a new product so that you can go sound like somebody else, right? Nobody's ever going to sound like Gary Pika. Nobody's ever going to sound like Alex Rogers. Those guys are amazing. They're phenomenal. You can't follow that. So go be you. That's who your customer wanted to do business with in the first place. So as we talk about that, we're going to talk about how to really deliver a QBR, both to win a new deal, which is a little weird when you think about it, right? We're talking about a QBR, which is something we do quarterly for existing customers. We'll talk about how to use that in your sales pitch to help you win a new deal.
Right.
We'll talk about how to grow your existing client base and add recurring revenue back to that client base. Some experts are telling us that with the advances in cybersecurity, with the upcharges in cybersecurity and MSSP type services, that we're missing out on 30 to 50% of our MRR just by upselling our existing clients. And if we edge, conservatively on that, let's say 25%. What's 25% of $1 million MSP? You're adding 250 grand a year to even a modest sized MSP. And I know the rate at which your guys are growing, some of them are way bigger than that already and are going to blow those numbers out of the water.
Right.
And then finally, we're going to deliver you a couple of real world stories. We'll talk to you firsthand about how our clients are using this. We've removed the names to protect the guilty, but we'll talk to you about a couple of great experiences some of our customers have had in using these to win business and grow the business they have from their existing customers and really build long-term relationships once they've proven that they're the MSP to beat in the space. The first use case I want to tell you about is an MSP out of California. Good guy. He's been with us a long time. He was actually one of our earliest customers. And basically, he went out and built a budget for a brand new prospect. And if you think about that, budgeting is something that's really hard to do for our existing customers. He took the time to budget it all out for a prospect. And this prospect, one of their pains was that they had multiple locations and they had separate internet, telephone, and mobile providers for each location. So they've got all these mess of bills. It's really hard for them to manage. They're hiring new people, letting people go. Bills are getting overlooked. Things are getting missed. And so he helped them consolidate all of this. The end result of it was amazing. He saved them about $2,000 a month in telecom expenses. No IT guy ever saved anybody money. So think about that, right? We're usually there going, hand out, please give me some money so I can go spend it for you.
The good ones are supposed to.
The good ones are supposed to, but it's hard to do today, right? All we're hearing is your products are going to get more expensive. We need more products. Cybersecurity is scarier than ever. Buy yada, 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 add products here. So to be able to go dissect their existing budget, their existing products and find savings is awesome. And it gave him the clout to go in and say, and I need you to spend $8,000 a month for me to be your go-to IT guy. So, he was able to actually get the first appointment with this customer with a really amazing tactic. And what he did was he went to him and said, he ran into him at a networking engagement in his town, and he asked them how engaged their current IT provider was in their budgeting process. And I think that's an interesting open because most IT companies don't do budgeting.
Right.
All they do is knock on your door and go, surprise, Windows 10 is dead in 6 weeks. I need you to spend 40 grand.
Right.
So if we can get out of that methodology, he was able to get right to the bottom of what your current guy doesn't even give you a budget. Well, let me show you what that might look like if you worked with me.
Alex, let me ask you a quick question. Why do you think that question is so hard? You nailed it right on the head. There's so many MSP business owners that they're afraid of finances, and they don't ask that question. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know that they're afraid of finances to not ask that question. I think they're afraid of how much work goes into building a budget, because if you do it manually, it's a pain in the neck.
Right.
Most MSPs don't even have, because we're nerds is a good reason why we're afraid of budgets. The funny story behind budgets is when I first met my fiance about 8 years ago now, she asked me what I did for a living, and I said, well, I own a small IT consulting practice. And she says, oh, well, I'm not really impressed by that. What does your budget look like? Well, my fiance is actually a Jewish banker, so it gets even funnier. And I went, budget? It's all up here. I just kind of wing it, right? But while I'm just kind of winging it as a business owner, and I knew in my gut where we were at, we were helping our clients build big, deep budgets in their spreadsheets. And at Lifecycle Insights, we've turned that into a process. So the reason that it's hard is because we don't have a tool for it and we don't have a process for it. If we can make it a repeatable process, it's pretty easy. And what this MSP did was took Lifecycle Insights, took the tool out to a prospect and used it the way he would use it with an existing customer. Not a lot of our clients do that. That was outside the box a little bit. But the reason that it worked is because budgets are hard for every MSP. So he's 99% sure that if he asks that question, it's a great wedge question. And if you talk about wedge selling, and you guys are great sales coaches, if you talk about driving that wedge between a prospect and their current provider, I don't have to go, oh, your current provider sucks. All I have to say is, what is your current provider doing to help you with this thing where I know they're probably deficient.
Right. Yep. Good
so
message.
Yeah. So, the budget is always a tough question, whether it's your future fiance asking it or whether it's you asking it to another business owner. But it's a great way to open the conversation, because in this day and age, cybersecurity is complicated. Everyone is going to get breached at some point. We have to know that we're doing everything that we can to manage how much it costs and to apply money towards the things that move the needle. And that's an important conversation to have with your business leaders as you're meeting with new folks. The second one was also a California MSP, and I promise you we have customers other places than California, but the two of them that I chose for today just happened to be about 100 miles from each other. This particular MSP, he heard the message that we were leaving 30 to 50% of the revenue on the table. He's in a peer group. His peer group leader was telling him this, and he went, you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to do a real bang up QBR for one of my customers. So he comes to us. We work with him, we get him onboarded, we teach him how to do it. He takes this process out to an architecture firm that he's been working with forever. And I want you to take just a second and listen to this quote. This is what he typed to me in a Slack channel that I picked up and carried away. And he says, I'd like to say that they liked the initial conversation we had, and this was a risk first conversation. They were impressed with the risk assessment. They were blown away with the budget. They have a gnarly budget full of architectural software, et cetera, and they were very happy to see it all in one place. And I think this right here speaks to where MSPs fall short in their budgeting, right? When we budget at an MSP, what do we budget for? Replacement of the PCs and the server. Maybe the firewall, probably not the printers, probably not any of the rest of that stuff. Right. Certainly not the architectural software and the line of business apps that they're buying from someone else, or the telco circuits, or all those other things. So by bringing that all together and giving this customer visibility, he's doing something that I call giving them permission to say yes. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But by taking away the fear of what comes next, it makes it easier for your customer to buy. And so while today we're going to talk about how to deliver the QBR that customer deserves, I want you to understand it's a risk forward conversation, but it really relies to budget. It really leans heavily on the budget. They were able to suggest a couple of small projects to this customer along with a security plan upgrade. They didn't get any pushback. This customer bought into their top tier security plan. He's able now to go take an existing pretty good customer and turn them into a quality upsold client. And this is a client that historically had been the one going, no, I don't want to come to your QBR. It's just another opportunity for you to sell me something.
Right.
And yeah, we all have a little bit of fear of that.
Yeah, I was going to say that the very last part of this quote, I think, is the most impactful, where it says, I'm very happy to see it all in one place. You know, the one place. And again, you're exactly right. You know, most MSPs have a tendency of giving a quote, and here's all the things that I think that I can sell you this year. That's not an annual budget. It's all technology related, hardware, software, services.
That's a sales pitch. That's what that is. That's a quote. And so, you know, being that this is that customer who always looked at Josh and said, hey, here he comes trying to sell me something again. And I had a customer who looked at me that way and gave me a hard time about that. And you know what? I had earned it. I had come to them in the guise of a QBR to tell them what I wanted them to buy, what I wanted them to do next. And I thought that was strategic, and really what that was tactical, and it really only mattered to my business. So as we talk about kind of examples of what QBRs should look like, what you should be working towards, let's talk about where we came from, because our entire industry learned how to do QBRs in the same place, right? Our entire industry comes from a place of doing a QBR that just justifies our existence. And if you sit back and think about that, having to go out and justify your existence to your customers is like pushing that big stone ball uphill nonstop, right? You're just always having to justify why we're here, justify why we're here, justify why we're here. And this goes all the way back to the days of the first RMM products. And I didn't buy an RMM until 2008. I know some MSPs that bought them well in advance of that. But when you bought your first RMM, do you remember what the sales pitch was? Do 85% of your work remote, is what they told me, right? Which translates to never see your customers again. And how much value was there back when you had the ability to walk in the building and say, hey, knock, knock, Mr. Point of Contact, I'm in the building today, and I just wanted to make sure you didn't need anything else while I'm here. I'm going to go take care of Debbie's print problem. Right? That built relationship. Hey, how are your kids doing on their soccer team? All right, cool. I'm going to go, I can drop off a cup of coffee, whatever. I can do all those things. I can build that relationship. Instead, we decided we could do all this remotely, and we lost that function. We lost that piece. In managed services, the whole goal of it was to only go on site when something's down. Well, what happens then? We did that for a couple of years. We damaged our client relationships, and we started getting pushback from our clients on this managed services thing. Well, I liked it better when you came to my office. And when we came back to the big four and said that, one of them actually said, well, it's because you're not doing QBRs. You need to go out to your customer and justify your existence. And this one provider actually went so far as to write a script that every time their RMM tool would do something, it would account for 5 minutes of time in their PSA tool. And now I could send my customer an invoice that says, well, by using my automation tool, I saved you 2,412 minutes last month, and you should love me for that, right? It was a load of BS. It was a way for us to justify our existence when really we were damaging our relationships. But we didn't know any better. We were new to this managed services thing. We latched onto these big multi-million-dollar companies who told us we can replace a human. We can make you do 85% of your stuff remote. You really need this solution. And in the end, it probably was best for us, but we didn't know any better on how to really manage the relationship. So I want to talk about what that relationship looks like. Because if you have a vendor and you have a relationship with them, you're going to like them more if the things that they talk about are what's are looking forward, or futures are. And if you think about a car salesman, he always says, James, you're going to look great driving that red convertible, top down, your dog sitting in the passenger seat, like cruising down the road, chilling, you and the pups. And it's going to be great. You're going to look awesome driving that car, and it's fast, man. You're going to have fun with it. Right. And now you're imagining what it looks like. You're imagining ownership of this car. Right. If I'm talking to my MSP client, I'm going to be talking to them about forward-looking things, not about how many tickets I closed, not about how many patches I patched or backups I backed up, but I want to talk about the things that they need to be doing in the future, what it's going to feel like when the pain goes away, what it's going to feel like when we fix the technology problem. If I can set that hook, they get to imagine a world where life isn't quite as terrible, where technology is helpful. And when we get them to imagine that world, that's when we start to win. So the trick to that is a forward-looking strategy. And I talk about the difference between strategic and tactical, right? Strategic is forward-looking. It's big picture stuff. It's the Jim Collins wide-angle guest stuff. It's the big down the road picture. Tactical could have been a ticket, could have been an email, probably something that really isn't super important to my customer in and of itself, because we're going to fix it and it's going to go away. Where that budget is big and it's long-term, and it looks at what they're going to be doing in 23 and 2024 and 2025. And we're planning for that future where things are less painful. The other thing we like to talk about is making data actionable, right? As MSPs, we have access to way too much data for our customers to consume. Right? If you ever run a rapid fire tool scan or any number of their competitors, they give you you could burn through 2 reams of paper and carry in what I call the thud factor report and drop it on the table.
Yeah, kerplunk.
Yeah, and I did that. I did that. ConnectWise told me, go justify your existence, so I did. I carried in my report, thud, dropped it on the table, and went, look at all the things that are wrong. And 15 minutes in, my customer went, this is really boring. Can we never do this again? I'm pretty sure this is what I pay you to take care of for me. Right. And so what we had to learn was that we needed to take that data and distill it down to something actionable before our customer really cared. And there's a quote from Colin Powell that is one of my favorites. And he says, when making a big decision as the Secretary of Defense, he wanted somewhere between 40 and 70% of the information. He didn't want it all. And he didn't want too insignificant a piece of it. And the whole purpose was to give him enough information to make a good decision, and not so much information that he got stuck in this analysis paralysis where he was unable to make a decision. And I think as MSPs, we're really good at that. We're really good at bringing our customer, hey, this machine's only got 4 GBs of RAMs, and it's got an SSD hard drive in it, and and we go into all this detail. And our customer doesn't care.
Yeah.
What they want to know is, how much money do I have to spend today? And when are you going to ask for money again? Because I have to be able to run a business on this stuff. So the trick is to distill that down and give less information, but the right information.
Alex, I wanted to chime in if I could. You asked a great leading question, the wedge question before about, I'm sure your current MSP does a budget for you that looks like this. Here's another one. Do you have a technology roadmap?
Yeah, that's a great one.
I'd always say, hey, you've got to, we talk about this in the mastermind peer groups, but it's like, hey, Mr. Prospect, I'm sure that you've got a great business plan, with 5-year goals, right? Yeah. You have a technology plan, a technology strategy that's going to help you connect those goals to your business.
Yeah.
And that's what we can do for you with a tool like this.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. And those are great questions, right? I'm sure you have a technology plan that aligns with that business plan that you're, and they're going to go, oh, well, maybe we haven't got to that part yet, but that gives you the chance to have a real conversation with that person. If you can turn that into kind of that open-ended question that leaves the customer hanging with that struggle, that's a great way to get in there. And so as you get there, the important part is to not overwhelm that customer when you go to build that plan, right? The customer needs the high level detail. They need that 40 to 70%, right down the middle. It gives them enough to make the decision and not so much that they can't make a decision. And I have seen so many times an MSP go into a sales meeting, a QBR, a new prospect discovery, and just overload the customer. And then they feel like they're just killing it. The customer's nodding the whole time, and they leave the meeting, and then the customer never answers the phone for them again. And they go, I don't know what I did wrong. And when we sit and kind of rehash the situation, I sit down with them and go, did you give this customer all the information you had? And they go, of course I did. And that's when we have to talk about how overwhelming that is for somebody who doesn't understand technology, and how that puts them in a point where they can't make a decision because they have significant fear of making the wrong decision. So I think that's one of the most important points that we can stress is how important it is to give just the right amount of information to enable your customer to say yes. We have to give them permission to say yes. So as we talk through the kind of information that a customer needs, I like to talk about a couple of pillars of a good QBR. The first one is one that I didn't even do at my MSP. And I look back and think how much better of a job I could have done and how much easier it could have been to get folks to come to the table had I known about this trick. And we were actually about to release Lifecycle Insights at IT Nation 2019 when one of my partners in beta came to me and said, where's the agenda function? I need to be able to build an agenda and send it out to my customer. And I went, agenda? Well, you just tell them what you're going to talk about. They go, no. We got to send it out ahead of time. So, well, okay, I guess. I mean, we did the last one. They know what we're coming for the next. And he says, man, you're missing the point. And I was a little hard-headed about this. And he says, the agenda is not only the thing that tells them why it's worth it for them to come show up, but it's the thing that lets them give me input and makes it their meeting. And if I send that agenda over 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time and say, Mr. Customer, here's 3 or 4 points that I need to talk to you about. Right. But I'd really like to know what's changing in your business and what you'd like to talk to me about. Are you buying another company? Are you buying a building? Are you shrinking? Are you growing? How's COVID doing for you? Throw them a couple questions and get them thinking. And then they're going to come back to you and say, well, actually, I think we need to buy new copiers. You probably should be involved in that. I hadn't even thought of it. Right. Or they're going to come back to you and say, well, actually, we're not doing so well because of COVID and we really need to reduce spend. We need to talk about that. Okay. You know what? That's terrible news. I don't want to hear it, but I would be grateful to have it 2 weeks ahead of my meeting instead of sitting at the table when I brought a sales deck this thick, expecting my customer to buy $10,000 in additional products and services, right? It's a totally different meeting when we're on their team, when we're on the same page, right? We can help them get through a tough time and help them figure out, what it's going to be like to let some employees go, how we protect the business technology in the process, what those things look like. So no matter what's going on with your customer, you probably need to be involved, whether it's a new copier, a new building, the acquisition of another company, or shrinking for some reason. You probably need to be involved in every piece of that. The agenda is the document that kind of sets that up. And the important part is sending that along with some questions. So again, opportunity for one of our partners to just make us better, make us smarter. They taught us that trick. I took it back and used it in my MSP, and it was absolutely fantastic. It helped me get more interest to my customers. Now this QBR that they didn't want to go to in the past was a meeting not only that they felt like they wanted to attend because they had stuff to talk to me about, but it was their idea to come talk to me about these things, right? They had put it on paper and said, no, actually, James, we're gonna do that meeting and we're gonna talk about this, 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 and this. And it was great because it brought them to the table in the mindset with already the mindset set of the things that I wanted to talk about. So it worked out really, really well. The next one that we like to talk about is that risk, is the budget. These are in the wrong order. So we'll talk about the budget. The budget is great because it gives us a couple of different ways to look at finance. This is an example of a 5-year budget forecast. I'm a huge fan of a 6 or a 12-month budget as well, right? We talked about strategic versus tactical already. A 5-year budget is very strategic. Sometimes our customers need that tactical crutch. Who's getting a new PC in the next 6 months? When are my big spend months? When are my low spend months? Even though we can look at, hey, 2025 is going to be way worse than 2022 or 2023. Be prepared for that bad year down the road. They still have ebbs and flows every year of when they need to spend money and how these things work. So we can give them both of those tools, and that near-term tactical budget really enables me to sit down with my customer and say, hey, I've got this small project I'd like you to do. When we do that project, does it make sense to do it over here in July, or should we wait till September to do it when it looks like you have a dip in your spending? And I'm really changing a lot of the conversation here we're able to have the conversation with our customer now about when do we spend money, not if we spend money. And that is so subtle in conversation as you go through it that the customer doesn't even pick up on it. I'm no longer asking them if they want to buy something. I used to go to my customer and go, will you buy this? And instead now I say, when would you like to spend the money to address this security risk or this concern? And that's the psychology of the sale, that just little things like that. And technical people can master the little details. We know that. You master a couple little details like that, and you're just going to knock it out of the park. The risk assessment. The risk assessment, in my mind, is one of the most important things. We're hearing all the experts in the space, the experts on sales, talking about selling a risk-forward sales process, letting the customer know how much cybersecurity risk they own today, and letting them make business decisions based on it. In my mind, that risk assessment sets the status quo. It is, Mr. Customer, this is where you're at today. If you don't spend any money, this is the risk you have to live with. This is the risk you have to own. And I follow it up with that budget to say, hey, this is the risk you have to own. This is what it costs you if you just maintain the status quo, right? And I think that's an important conversation to have, because now our customer understands the cost of doing business. And once they understand the cost of doing business, we can talk about what it looks like to improve the status quo. That's the recommendation. That's the project summary. That's the little item that we're going to use that moves the needle just a little bit for that customer. So, Mr. Customer, if you had a little bit of money to spend, this is where I would recommend you spend it. And this is how that moves the needle versus the status quo. This is where it would make you more secure, more stable, more reliable. Mm-hmm. So really a big fan of putting all those pillars together and then wrapping it up with some sort of a summary. I like the summary because we're in a world where everybody goes from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. I had one right before this call that lasted an hour. This one should last about 50 minutes or so, an hour. And then I've got one every half hour through the rest of the day today. Literally no breaks between, scheduled back to back to back to back. And I know the CEOs and the high-level executives at a lot of your customers live the exact same life. So if I spend an hour giving them all this strategic planning and I don't wrap it up in a nice little bow and say, here's what you need to remember, they're going to go into the next meeting and they're going to forget something.
Exactly.
Right? They need some walking away advice. They need something that they can take out the door, that they can remember. Hey, if I remember nothing else, here's your biggest 3 risks, and here's the three ways I think we ought to address them in the next couple of months, something like that. So I think these are a good rough and tumble start. I think it's important to talk about what's not here. There's no asset list here. Everybody talks about, I got to have my asset list. I got to know how old everything is. I got to know the warranty statuses. I got to do all this other stuff. Well, the majority of that can be covered in an assessment. The budget forecast accounts for when we're going to replace this stuff. So we don't really need to sit and spend a lot of time digging into that tactical detail of the 100 machines that this customer owns to know when Peggy in accounting gets a new one. She gets one when it's her turn, and everybody gets one when they turn 5 years old or 4 years old or whatever your methodology is. So I think it's really important to limit it to the amount of information that your customer needs to digest.
Alex, I love that, because we talk about this all the time. You need to have a business conversation with the C-suite, not a technical conversation. Because if it's technical, it's going to go right over their head. And Alex very eloquently just walked right through all of those are business documents, business conversations. So well done.
Every last one of them. And I'm a huge believer in transparency. I don't think you should leave anything out. But I think that if you want to have a technical conversation, get your service director to meet once a month for 15 minutes with your point of contact. Your point of contact is probably the most technical person there. Hopefully it's not the C-suite. And that person can meet with your technical director. You can talk about tickets. You can talk about when Billy was mean to Sally on the phone. You can talk about all the things that usually derail these quarterly business reviews, but get those things off the plate. That's the other beautiful thing about the agenda is if on your agenda, when you send it to your customer, when it comes back to you, it's Billy was mean to Sally and I want to yell at you about a service ticket, right? If I find out about that 4 days in advance of my meeting, I can pick up the phone and go, hey, Mr. Customer, I am so sorry. Your satisfaction is worth so much more to me than to let this fester for 4 more days. Let's solve this problem right now. I take the tactical off the table, solve for it. And by the time I go to my business meeting, we're still strategic. We're still having business conversations. Okay. And so, that just one more reason to turn those things in, to make sure that agenda gets out, gets back to you and carries some good data. So we've all seen a process model of some sort. This is the process model that I used at my MSP to do both sales and recurring quarterly business reviews with my customers. So when you start your sales process, it's this discover thing, right? We're out here inventorying assets. We're looking for vulnerabilities. We're trying to figure out what's wrong with the environment, right? We assess baseline risk assessment. This is literally our risk assessment, putting it on paper, knowing where our risk is, knowing what's going on. Finally, we report. The report is not the same as the assessment. And it's very easy to mix these two words up, but the assessment, actually doing the assessment, discovers data collection. The assessment is putting it on paper. Here's where we're at, red, yellow, green, marking up where the customer is, compliant, not compliant, et cetera. The report is actually your deliverable for your customer. Okay. So we do our data discovery, we put it on paper, we build our plan, and then we go report and deliver it to the customer. Now I've drawn this little blue line through my process because I want you to understand that in the sales process, we're just doing those first three, right? Remediate and verify is after my customer says yes. We do our little pinky swear, we shake on it, whatever, we fist bump, whatever we do these days when we close a deal. And then we go remediate. We deliver, we fix the problem, and then we verify. We go watch the solution, make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, make sure that the problem went away. Mm-hmm. And then we start all over. That's why this thing is a circle, right? Because now we go out and we inventory again, we look for new assets, we look for new vulnerabilities, we check to see what's changed, and we continue to work through this. So your QBR literally is those first three in the loop. Your sales process literally starts in the first beginning part of that loop. And the reason I liken the sales process to a QBR is because I think the two are so darn similar that we're doing ourselves a disservice if we try and believe that they're different things. The most successful MSPs we see take an account manager out to meet a brand new prospect, and they'll say, hey, you know what? I want you to meet this account manager who works with us. He's going to tell you what it's like to be our customer. He's going to tell you about the meetings that he's going to have, or someone in his shoes are going to have with you on a quarterly or semi-annual basis. He's going to explain to you what it looks like to work with us, because we want to build a relationship. We don't want somebody who doesn't talk to us. So he's going to show you what it's like. And all of that value can't come from a sales guy, right? A sales guy he has one job, right? Get in front of the customer and close that deal. But putting in that value and showing a customer what it's like to actually build a relationship with a customer and what it feels like to be in that relationship, bring those account managers out for that is super valuable. If you're doing this for, we'll absolutely share that slide deck with you, Michael. If you're doing this in a scenario where you've really got to convince a customer why they should work with you, what it feels like to be our customer is one of the most valuable things you can do. So we start at discover, we work through the assessment, we report it and deliver it to our customer, then we remediate, verify, and start all over. This is sales process all the way through to first QBR, right? If we start at discover in the sales process, assess, report, win the deal, do our onboarding, verify that what we did in onboarding works, we start discovery over, and we go do our first QBR. And we loop around every quarter to do a QBR with this customer every quarter. But I just want to point out that this is very much like our sales process. It's just our sales process expanded and continued as we work with the customer over time. It looks like we got a question here. So yeah, we're absolutely going to record this, let you guys have it. Slide deck for sure. I once got a call from a client. It was after the tax year was done, and his accountant told him that he made too much money, that he needed to spend $20,000, and that if he didn't, he'd have to pay for it in taxes. I'd already done taxes and told him there was nothing I could do. If we'd done QBRs, et cetera, we could have helped them. We actually have a script that we give out to all of our customers. It's a set of 3 emails that we send out. The first one is really nice. It's, hey, wanted to present you with a little bit of information. The second one is, I just wanted to make sure you saw my email the other day. And the third one is the network's down. They always open the third one. That has a 100% open rate. And then as soon as they see the network's down, we open the email. I apologize. So sorry to give you a heart attack, Mr. Customer. But what I wanted you to understand was you may need to spend money before the end of the tax year. And if you were to spend it, these are the things I would have you spend it on. Click here to schedule time with me so that we can talk through this. Even if you're on a quarterly business review basis with your customers, it never hurts to remind them that you're there at tax time. Because I had a similar situation to his, only my customer came to me and said, I've got 10 grand to spend. You're going to sell me a $10,000 laptop. And I went, I cannot in good conscience sell you a $10,000 laptop. And the customer literally looked me in the face and said, well, Dell.com can sell me a $10,000 laptop. So if you can't, they will. And what it came down to was this was grant money that had been given to this organization. And if they didn't use it in that fiscal year, they were going to have to give it back.
Right.
So they gave their favorite person the fanciest laptop they could possibly buy instead of give that money back. Well, if I had been out in front of this, we'd have bought 3 laptops with that money. We'd have planned early. We'd have done this, done this well and done it in advance. So yeah, to that point, there's always an opportunity to set that customer up for success. And it works best when you've already got a practice in place where you're doing some lifecycle management, you're doing recommendations and best practices. You've got that strategic roadmap built. Because if I have my strategic roadmap built and my customer comes to me and says, hey, I got an extra 20 grand, it's really easy for me to go, okay, let's knock the first 20 grand off the strategic roadmap and move some things up a year, right? We can buy you into a more advanced position than you expected to be in at this point. So I think that's a great talking point, great opportunity there. So one of the things that everybody struggles with when we start trying to build a quality business review instead of just a quarterly business review is that we have data all over the place, right? We have data in IT Glue, in our RMM tools, in our PSA tools. There's data in software portals like 365 and whatever line of business apps your customers are using. Excuse me. They probably have an ADP product or something like that where they've got data. This stuff's all over the place. At some point, we have to get data out of all those platforms. We have to put it all together in a single presentation. We have to take it back to our customer and make it presentable. And at the end of the day, in a normal MSP, the only person qualified to do this by hand is the owner and maybe the service manager, or if they have a senior VCIO or something like that. But what it translates to is the only person qualified to do this by hand is the most expensive resource in the building.
Right. That's already too busy.
Who's already too busy because he's got to watch 100 customers or 75 customers or how many you got out there.
Right.
So, we talk a lot about the resources that are required to do this and why you should build yourself a process that turns into kind of a crawl, walk, run, but that as you go through it allows you to remove this work from the most expensive and the busiest resource in your building. We really want you to be able to start where you are. Like you can't, if you wait until it's perfect, you'll never get it out the door. So we're big fans of start where you are and iterate. And today that might be a manual process. Today, put together that QBR manual, but then figure out which pieces of it you can automate. Right? And there's always a little bit that you can automate. You can automate some report writing. You can bring some things together. You can buy a platform, whatever. Even if you don't use our platform, there's a lot of ways you can automate this stuff. And then the actual run for this is the delegation of the things you can't automate. In no world can you automate everything. But I can take it out of the 6-figure employee's hand and put it in the hands of the entry-level help desk guy or of the dispatcher. We have an MSP who does business with us who literally does 3 QBRs a day when he's doing them. And he gets all the reports 30 minutes before he goes in to meet with the customer. He never touches the prep. He never touches the setup. They have it figured out and they literally do it all for him. And he's got a standard operating procedure for it. We'll actually share that with you later in the presentation. It's on one of the last slides and we'll send it out with all this when we go. But the ability for you to turn this into a repeatable process is one of the most important things. We really want to make sure that we are turning this into a process that works.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, it boils down to building a process. The automation saves you time. The ability to delegate allows you to scale. And at the end of the day, really checkmate for this is being able to deliver this process without the owner, without the most expensive people having to be involved. At my MSP, the winning moment was when I had such a good sales process that my account manager went out and sold a new customer, onboarded them, did several QBRs with them over a period of 3 years. And I had never met them when I sold my company. And I had several customers in that situation. To me, that's checkmate. That means you have a business that you can scale, that the owner doesn't have to be involved in every single thing. So really look for those things that allow you to automate, those things that allow you to delegate. I tell everybody when we talk about lifecycle insights, there's nothing we do in our platform that an MSP can't do manually, that they can't do in a spreadsheet, that they can't do with fancy ConnectWise reporting or some of these other tools, if you're willing to put the time into it, and you're going to put some time into it. There's nothing you can't do yourself. We just automate it and make it faster, right?
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, if you can't afford to go out and buy a platform, if you can't do this all yourself, then it's time for you to go out and figure out exactly what your procedure looks like, document your procedure, and then pick apart the procedure to find the parts of it that you can automate, and then find the parts, if you can't automate them, that can be delegated. And I think that's probably the most important part.
Right. Yep. Good point.
So that kind of wraps up the conversation that we wanted to have. I mean, I think that really brings us to that final point. If you guys want to learn more, or if you just want to follow all of my ramblings on social media, feel free to hook up with me on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about what we do at Lifecycle Insights, lifecycleinsights.sucks. It's a great website that we built as a promotional gag for IT Nation last year. Check it out. There's a lot of good content there. And if you don't laugh at that one, we're probably not going to be friends anyway. So, and then if you want to check out the product, of course, lifecycleinsights.io, you can sign up for a free trial out there. And just for showing up for this webinar, we give you 50% off of your first 2 paid months with that coupon code right there. It will go out with the slide deck and everything when it goes out to you guys. And if you want to see our customers' standard operating procedure for how he's built out the quarterly business review and delegated all of it so he never has to touch it, that's actually also available at that bit.ly link. You can go download that document and use that to guide you in your MSP. I think he's one of our brightest folks as far as standardizing and processizing. He's got it down to something that I never would have dreamed possible. So pretty impressive there.
Yep. I love that, how you share the best practices of the community. I think that's so important.
Our community has built our product for us, really. We envisioned this little tiny thing that solved one little problem, and they've just turned it into an amazing thing. We meet with our community at least twice a week. We have a couple of open office calls. The Friday one usually gets 30 or so customers on it. We talk about new products and features, things that we're changing, and then they come tell us what we need to do. They literally come tell us, hey, you need to build this feature. You need to make it do this. You need to make it do that. They've taught us so much that we couldn't have built in a vacuum. Like, it's just an amazing way to build a product. So we've learned a ton from them.
All right. Excellent. All right. Well, good job, Alex. Thank you for all the great content. Loved what we talked about in the conversation. And I'll be sure to, I'll copy in all the attendees on the promo code, and we'll send out a copy of the deck as well. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Before we close out, I wanted to just give anybody a moment if they have any last minute questions. I think we answered everything in chat. It looks like we did, right, Alex?
I think so.
And if you've got any other questions, go ahead and just drop them in chat. I've got the recording. I'm going to post up on our YouTube channel, also inside the Mastermind learning site. And then I'll get a copy of the deck with Alex, and we can email that out as well with the promo code. So,
and then we'll be in Chicago, right? We get to talk about this in Chicago.
Yeah.
Ross had some questions about integrations real quick before we talk about Chicago. Ross, yeah. So we integrate with a ton of different platforms. The major ones you need to know about, the ones you need to have to use our tool, ConnectWise Manage, Autotask, Synchro, Halo PSA, or IT Glue. One of those 5 is almost required. We also do Breach Secure Now, Know Before. We have integrations with Dell, HP, Lenovo, Microsoft, Cisco, a bunch of those kind of guys, as well as LionGuard and Microsoft 365. I don't know if I ever mentioned them. So we have a lot of integrations, but you need one of those core 5. So if you heard one that is a product you guys have, Manage, Autotask, Synchro, Halo, or IT Glue, then you might be able to work with us.
Yeah, Alex, I love the tool because not only does it make you stickier with your existing clients, you think of how hard and how expensive it is just to get a new contractual client, right? But then a lot of people don't do a very good job of staying connected with them, and they skip the QBRs, or when they deliver a QBR, it's worthless. And I love the tool, how it organizes it on the back end, but also on the front end, that it can be a lead gen tool. So I love that.
The folks who are doing the best with it have turned it into part of the sales process. And I think, you're not doing yourself justice if you have a great sales process and a bad account management process, or a great account management process that doesn't roll into sales. Really pick those two apart because they're kind of the same thing. These are they're really very, very tightly related. As MSPs, somehow we've driven a wedge between them and convinced ourselves they're two different things, and they're really not. Marketing is a different animal, but the sales process is the same. Walter, if you're here and asking me that question, James needs to tell you all about his workshop in Chicago.
Yeah, so next week, Thursday, Friday, so June 24th, 25th, or 23rd, 24th, 25th. So it's the next Thursday, Friday in Downers Grove, just outside Chicago. We've got a 2-day workshop. Alex is going to be there. We've got Halo PSA going to be there, TD Synex. And each quarter we bring in different dynamic speakers in the industry and strategic partners like Alex. And it's not an event where you're pitched at. We're there to teach you how to be a better business owner, how to use these tools to make more money and save more money. So it's 2 days of fun, 2 days of educational content. I'll email out a link for you to register. It's no charge. We'll comp that for you for attending, and I appreciate everybody listening in. But I'll send the link out to the event and hope to see everybody there. So, all right.
Come hang out, Walter. We'll buy you a beer.
Yeah. Oh, did you guys just hear that? Alex is buying.
I'll buy you all a beer. I'm a bad influence. We all know that.
All right, we're gonna take him up on that. All right, well, we'll see you. Alex, we'll see you there next week.
No pig whistles.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
All right, guys. We'll talk soon.
Adios. Thank you.